Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
So, welcome to another episode of Conveyancing Matters with my co-host Lorraine, and today we've got a very special guest, Tayo. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing? Hey,
Very
Lorraine.
good, very good. You're right, Lorraine?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Very excited to have Tayo here. We've got somebody with us that knows what they're doing, which is very, very scary. Very, very scary. So, Tayo, perhaps for the benefit of the of maybe the conveyancers watching who don't know who you are, and I suspect there won't be many of those, but in terms of everyone will know who you are. But do you just want to fill us in on what you do and maybe how you and Stu found each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a content creator. I'm a co-founder of a platform called BrickzWithTipz, which teaches people about property, whether you're a first-time buyer or investor. I'm also a TV presenter on a program called The Great House Giveaway on Channel 4. And I'm also on a newly released show called Key to a Fortune, which is also on Channel 4. I also do quite a bit of news like Good Morning Britain, This Morning, BBC News, and so on and so forth, speaking about property matters like interest rates and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think I've covered everything. And I know Stu through we bumped into each other at a couple of events actually, and I always see the PCS legal branding. So yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
everybody sees that, Tayo.
Tayo first come up in sort of our radar because we started to act for a lot of clients that were starting out on sort of like a bit of a property adventure. We're looking to potentially sort of give up the day job and actually get into property investing full time. And of course, last year probably wasn't the best for that. But I don't know what you think, Tayo. It seems to be it became very fashionable, didn't it, for a period? Lots of people sort of jumping in, buying properties for investment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of it might have stemmed from the global pandemic, right? A lot of us were inside our homes during lockdown. And when you're not going to the pub or going to restaurants all the time, you start saying, actually, what can I do with my money? And I think that the interest in investing, not only in property, but investing as a whole, just went through the roof. And I think that's been one good thing that's come out of that period.
Well, actually, Tayo, before we get on to perhaps the time frame for conveyancing transactions, which is a bit grim as we know, I'm really interested to know your views actually, therefore, on some of the challenges that perhaps property investors are facing now, and some of the government rhetoric around, landlords letting, rental levels, difficulty for letting, getting rid of Section 21 notices. What's your feeling for the market there?
There's a lot of as landlords feel just in general, there's so much regulation that can make it difficult for them to operate. I think that one thing to remind any investors or landlords that are in the space at the moment, legislation isn't new. All of these things isn't new. And even though it makes it a bit tougher, sometimes what it can do, and I need to use my words wisely, sometimes it shakes out the people that were giving landlords a bad reputation anyway. And sometimes it can end up being a good thing. So if we look at things like HMOs and Article 4, when it first came into place, it's like, oh, I can't believe this. But the people that are operating compliant HMOs, doing everything that they need to do, and they're in an Article 4 area, a lot of the time they're finding that through grandfather rights, they've got a highly valuable asset, more valuable than it was previously. And now it's not so easy to get into that industry. That asset is going up in value even more. So I think that any investor or landlords that are doing things correctly to begin with, getting it right the first time, sometimes in some cases, they will benefit from some of the regulation in place. Some of it anyway, not necessarily the tax ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but hopefully people are keeping the property for long enough that maybe that's not going to be, if it's a long-term investment, that's less of an immediate concern, I suppose. And Stu, what are you finding your clients? Are they still got an appetite for purchasing investment properties? What's your view from your side of the fence?
It has picked up this quarter, certainly. It's picked up. I think there's probably an accumulation of things maybe last year. Obviously, the cost of living rates, money in as a complete generalization was a lot tighter. So probably appetite for risk in terms of new buyers getting into the market for investment was probably more limited. But I think now there's so much information out there, on social media sort of content. You can go on YouTube now. There are so many people educating people on how to buy properties, the right way of doing it. So I think what Taylor's just said there, has got a lot of importance because, if you go back 10 years, people buying sort of, HMOs, it was a bit sort of tucked away under the carpet. People didn't like to talk about it for very obvious reasons, but, people didn't like to talk about, converting properties. But now there's a plethora of, information that you can have access to. And I think I was a bit critical maybe years ago about sort of a lot of people and property educators actually encouraging people to maybe giving up their jobs and going into property. But now I think, there is enough content out there that it is possible.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We look at something that was announced recently, right? Furnished holiday lets taxes has been changed. Basically, that program has been abolished. And I haven't seen it, Stu, but I know that I can go online and find 10 videos from content creators about the next steps of the furnished holiday lettings has been abolished. And I already know that I can find that, basically. And that's where we are. So I think that content creators, people choosing to add value and teach people that about these things, it's gone through the roof. And that definitely does encourage new investors.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because if you go back, say, 5 years, I would have been oblivious, probably only 5 years. I would have been oblivious to things like rent to rents, all that kind of world that was tucked away. Me sort of sitting in my office doing the legal work for people. You'd think I'd know about that. But actually, to me, it was a new dawn, new avenues of work, new information I had to absorb. So what did I do? I did exactly the same kind of thing. Went online initially to do the research and to connect with people like yourself. Because it's virtually a new industry. Deal sources, how long have deal sources been in the industry? Probably not that long.
They have been a while, for quite a long time, But like you say, social media just makes it more prevalent. And I think you're absolutely right. It's that kind of like 5 year span that's just made it really, really hot.
Definitely.
I think it's interesting from the legal perspective because quite a lot of what I might call sort of straightforward conveyancing firms will quite often don't do landlord and tenant work. From the legal side, it's become quite a niche area because often the landlord and tenant work kind of ties in with the litigation repo side of things. So you often, that doesn't necessarily sit with non-contentious conveyancers, Tayo. So I think that's why perhaps, conveyancers more generally don't sort of know about the nuances that Stu talks about, because we might act for we'll act for a client who's buying a buy to let, but they often then want the next step of advice, don't they? They want to be able to do, to the assured short hold. They want to know when they've got a few properties, how to get dud tenant from unit 5 out or whatever. And that's often not what, a non-contentious firm will do.
So, I think that's where it's changed, Lorraine. I think if you go back from a law firm's perspective, if you go back, say, 10 years, the volume of people that would buy for investment purposes was a lot more limited. Yes, there were still the volume buyers that had the knowledge, but now there are so many clients that buy for investment. And it might just be one or two properties, even just the one. But now I think as a conveyancer, you need to know a lot more about landlord than ever before, because it's not just your assured short hold tenancy that it used to be. There are now purchase option agreements. There are so many different areas that you need to know about that I would say have probably been put into the arena by people that, like yourself, that have really gone into this business, all from different backgrounds, and I think have made it much more expanded and interesting.
Absolutely. I think that we were at a time where you could buy a property, buy to let property, you rent it out to a family, and it's that simple, right? But I think that one thing that we know in our industry is that people are innovative, right? When things change. So when profits from buy to let reduces, people are saying, what can I do about contacting a council and giving it to a council for 3 years for social housing? Or what about a semi-assisted living company? Well, maybe I can give it to them for 5 years. Or maybe I do serviced accommodation and put it on Airbnb. Or maybe I do a HMO or whatever it may be, all of these different things. And I think that as a result of that, sometimes conveyancers are on board with these things where they may have not previously been familiar with. And I guess that's where things are changing slightly.
It's definitely changed because, again, if you go back, say, 10 years, the volume of work that you could get if you were sort of, specializing in this area was limited. But now with so many people doing it, the demand for your sort of after completion services has gone through the roof. And
I
like
still
you
think,
said,
I have to say, I don't necessarily completely agree with you in terms of the number of conveyancers that might do the work, Stu. I think, you know, your firm will, because it's big enough and you've made a play for that work. But obviously I see lots of firms either because I train them or I locum in them. And I can tell you there are lots and lots and lots of firms that sort of don't touch it. They'll just do, you know, purchase a straightforward buy to let and really not much else. And if they do the much else, they're potentially doing it negligently because they just haven't got the expertise to do it.
yeah, I
I
wasn't
think,
saying that there was more firms doing it, but there's more people buying
yeah,
and being more creative in the way they buy and what they do with the property after, and therefore it's an area of work that if you know you want to go into it, there's a lot of opportunities that are there.
yeah, no, I agree with that. So, well, Tayo, we kind of exchanged messages, you know, before today, and I guess this sort of leads into with the conveyancer sort of hat on, if you like, because as we were saying, you know, when I first qualified a billion years ago, you know, the average conveyancing transaction was perhaps 6 to 8 weeks, and now it's many times that, sometimes many multiples of that if you've got a leasehold. And what I'm really interested to know, Tayo, from your perspective, really from the outside looking in and from a very different perspective, you know, the bottom line is conveyancing timeframes have got much longer. We've got loads of prop tech, we've got loads of things that are supposed to help the conveyancer, but the net result appears to be, you know, transactions are taking far, far longer than they did 20 years ago. I mean, what's your view on that? Have you got any, you know, any particular insights as to why you think that might be the case?
Right. So, speaking about me in particular, and I think that this may go for other people like myself as well. I've bought a few properties. I've done quite a few transactions with conveyancers, and through doing different transactions, there are different things that have arisen through the different transactions that I've done. And I think that in the workplace, people respect a conveyancer or solicitor's position anyway. And I think for someone like myself, having respected that position, and I know that there's been different nuances on different transactions, I know the process could be longer, but I kind of get it, if that kind of makes sense. Because I can't really talk to it. Some of the stuff that you guys know and you guys tell me is that, whoa, all I could do is ask and lean on your expertise, right? So even though I would much love a much faster process, sometimes from my point of view, it's almost like, how much can I say when they're doing so much of the work that I couldn't possibly even fathom, if that kind of makes sense. In the same breath, I think that based on what Lorraine has said, if it was taking 8 weeks ages ago, how possibly is it longer today? Surely all of these things that have been put in tech, in logistics, all of these improvements that have been happening in all other industries, why it has the conveyancing process, why is it still in like the dinosaur times? I really don't know.
Well, the dinosaur time, we talk about this quite a lot, Tayo, actually. It's something that Stu and I sort of regularly have a whinge about. But of course, Stu, you know, the massive issue, you know, for you and people in your position, of course, is the massive regulatory burden now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, you cannot argue that the role of a conveyancer has expanded over the years, and what we're now expected to do under our regulation, what we're expected to advise on, has massively increased. Even when I've been doing it 26, 27 years, and the difference is, you know, you couldn't even quantify it. And with all the AML and ID checking now, and that's become a you know a mass part of what we do. But I think, you know, yes, we do a lot more, but then that probably I'm guessing would be similar in most industries. Yes, there's more service that you have to give, but again, Lorraine and I talk about tech all the time, but I don't really think there's been much tech that's directly impacted the way a transaction runs, has there, Lorraine? It's, you know, it's solving problems maybe that we don't have.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think
bolt on.
I think, Tayo, if I hear the phrase, you know, I've got a game-changing product again, I might just sort of, you know, I might just disconnect from LinkedIn, because I think certainly from my perspective from the outside looking in, because I'm not, you know, at the coalface all the time now, so I feel like I can say what I like because I don't have any affiliation to anybody. I'm not selling anybody's product. Certainly, Tayo, what I feel is that there is a lot more tech, and there are people coming into the conveyancing space basically who want their slice of the pie, and as a consequence of which, that, you know, particularly from the tech side, everything has become incredibly fragmented. You know, we don't have one platform which all conveyancers use to do all these things. You might have, you know, 6, 8, 10 different prop tech products that do AML. And you might have another number of products that do, for example, the latest thing appears to be managing raising inquiries. Well, quite why we need a bit of kit to do that, I've no idea, but that's beside the point. But none of this kit, none of it talks to each other. I mean, I can only do bold and italic, Tayo, so I'm, you know, I'm an old, I am definitely an old dinosaur. But none of the tech talks to, you know, it just doesn't talk to each other. So everybody's using their own bits of kit or bits of kit that they've been sold, if they're using any bits of kit at all. So, you know, I certainly think from the outside looking in, that's a problem. So what did you think when you set up your prop tech company, Tayo? How did you kind of work out what you wanted to do and how you wanted to come into the space, given that background?
Yeah, so my company isn't necessarily a prop tech company. It's more like a property education. But I guess to your question, what I kind of found is that we deal with a lot of first-time buyers. And I think that our thing in the conveyancing process is managing expectations.
Yeah.
It is a process. It is very daunting. And I think that letting them know that that may be the case, but also reassuring them that, look, this is important work that's being done to make sure that you've got a sound investment, or you're making a sound purchase, or you're not being caught out. I think that that managing expectation piece right at the beginning is so important for them. Yet, even when you do that, they do get stressed, daunted about the process, because it is a very, very long process. And speaking of prop tech as well, even though I don't have a prop tech company, I know that there have been talks for some years, and I'm not an expert on it, but using like blockchain technology to help the conveyancing process. I'm sure you guys may have heard of it. And I know in certain countries like Estonia, they are using it in the medical space. So hopefully, if it is a success in the medical space, in some countries, hopefully it can come to the conveyancing space in this country. Who knows? But at this point in time, I think that even though I'm not in the industry, when Lorraine is mentioning that someone's got a tiny bit of tech that's like gonna hopefully speed up 3% of the process, sometimes I think I just completely get that. It's like, we don't need that. We need something industry-wide that helps everybody, and it's just uniform and it's very, very easy to use. And I think that until we get something like that, there's not going to be any like real change.
Tayo, you've probably just summed up everything in almost one sentence there. That's almost what lawyers get thrust upon. They get something that will change maybe 3% of the process.
As you say, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
That's such a brilliant phrase. Yeah. Of course, Tayo, that's why you're doing what you're doing, and Stu hanging around doing what we're doing. That's such a brilliant phrase. I'm going to use that. But I'm definitely going to use
that is exactly how it is. And unfortunately, there isn't anything that joins all those dots. And I think until things become mandatory in terms of the way a process is rolled out across conveyancing, then nothing's going to change. But I massively agree with another point that you made earlier there as well. And I do think the industry does have its own problems, and sometimes maybe should look at itself, insofar as we all talk all the time about changing everything, but we never actually say how important our job is and what we do. And we're pivotal to protecting the client, the money they're about to spend. And I don't think we talk about that enough as an industry. I think too often we focus on what we can change and the negatives without actually saying what we do, and we're here to protect all those people that we act for.
Absolutely. I think there's that.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Abby.
No, you go, Lorraine.
Well, I was going to say your point, actually, I was going to sort of pick back up on about, the respect in the conveyancer thing, which is really important, because actually Stu and I, needless to say, because we've been doing this for nearly 4 years now, or whatever, we've done YouTube chats where specifically on the fact that we don't think actually conveyancers get the respect from their clients or indeed their peers that they should get and that they deserve, given that, I mean, and it sounds a bit pompous, but conveyancers are such an important part of UK PLC, because so much of UK PLC is built on home ownership and property ownership in a way that it isn't in other jurisdictions. So, but our impression very much is that people are much more willing to complain. They're much more willing to have a go. They'll walk in and expect to be seen. Tayo, you wouldn't do that with your dentist. You might get, if you ring up, you might get an appointment in 3 weeks, but people will walk. perhaps a bit less since COVID, but they will walk into their conveyancer's office and just expect to be seen because they're walking by. So I'm that respect that you have for the people that you work with is fantastic, but I think lots and lots of people don't have that, I have to say. And I think
Yeah,
part of our PR, we don't do that very well.
yeah, and I think that even as you're speaking, I was thinking, who may that be? I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, but homeowners who are moving home, they may see the conveyancing process as kind of just like a cog in the works, a stopping point. I think that maybe where you've got like investors who are running a business, or even if it's developers or somebody, they understand that this is a pivotal point to protecting everything that they've done thus far. So maybe you'll see the difference in those two. But I wouldn't take the complaining stuff too much. I mean, this is the UK. We love a complaint. It's one of the things we do best, right? So it's just
That
part
and
and
queuing.
parcel, right?
That and standing in a queue. But as I say, we do
Yeah.
talk about that a lot, don't we, Stu, really? And just the general attitude.
We do, but I think it all does go back to education a lot of the time, and that's why, you know, Tay's doing a great job with his programs on TV. And I think actually telling people about the importance of the legal process, that yeah, probably most first-time buyers don't even understand what conveyancing is, what a conveyancer does.
Well, there were some stats out recently, like in the last
Yeah.
week. I should have looked it
Yeah.
up, that you know
Yeah.
people don't know what conveyancers do, which is quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's just confined to first-time buyers, Stu. I think
Possibly not.
lots of people,
Yeah.
you know, quite frankly. But
Yeah. I suppose the first stop is the estate agent, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, because they're so focal, everybody knows what an estate agent is and know where to look at the property. So I think you know, those channels go via those agents, and that's why I wonder whether, and we've spoken about this 100 times before, but whether material information and closer relationships between agents and lawyers at an earlier stage may, in capital letters, may
Yeah.
make a 3% difference.
Yeah. I think Tayo's 3% difference. I think in the 4 years we've been doing that, I think that's the nugget line, isn't it, really?
It is, yes. But
I think, Tayo, to pick up on your point, I mean, there's an irony about what we do, because if we find out that there is a problem, whether it's access planning, Article 4, whatever it is, because most of the people we act for will be, you know, it's an emotional investment. It's going to be their home.
Absolutely.
They're already thinking about where their carpets and curtains are going. If we tell them something's wrong, we're doing our job, but they shoot the messenger. We are actually protecting their interest in saying, really sorry, this property hasn't got a right of access. You can't get to it. In doing our job, you know, the messenger gets shot, and I can't think of many other professions where that will perhaps happen quite so regularly. So I think your education you know, view is really, really important, I have to say. I think we need people like you, Tayo.
definitely.
And I also think that, and this may be completely different, but I also think that conveyancers need to start making content as well. Personally, I think that conveyancers can start podcasts like this, and they need to start telling stories where the clients are, where they can see that, do you know what, this client had this problem, but because they were using us as the experts in this field, we helped them do X, Y, Z. I've often got a story of one of my old conveyancers who's now retired, who, in short, I was buying a property, my mortgage came up short. So the vendor was saying that I'm going to somebody else because I need to buy the property onwards in the chain. They put it on the market, they got a buyer. My conveyancer, and I would have known to do this, they advised me and said, look, you've already paid for the searches. The new buyer wants to buy your searches, which I don't even know that was possible. And she was saying that if you still think you're in the running for this property, you can refuse to sell the searches. I said, the money's already spent, I refuse to sell the searches. Anyways, cut a long story short, the person forward in the chain reduced their price so my vendor could reduce their price. And I ended up getting about £24,000 off the property. That was all to my conveyancer. And maybe that's why I respect conveyancers in the process. Because that's not my field. I wouldn't have known to do that. I wouldn't have that property today. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, and I guess for more experienced people like Stu and I, it is a matter of, well, obviously acting in your client's best interest, but Stuart is trying to see those angles, give clients thoughts that they haven't had or that they don't know. And I do think, actually, dare I say, that can be lacking today, can't it, Stu?
I think, yeah, maybe slightly, but I think again, as maybe conveyancers, as lawyers, we're good at looking through documents, spotting that there's problems. But what lawyers aren't very good at is probably marketing, self-marketing. You know, we're not salespeople, we're not marketeers, are we? So the problem is we don't have the skill sets maybe others do. And I completely agree with you. You know, if we advertised all the time the problems that exist and what we've done to help, maybe we'd be looked on differently. I'm always trying to educate people that work for me here, you know, to really open up those lines of communication. And too often I see that, you know, they're short and sharp answers, but actually explaining to a client, taking the time to explain why something is such a big problem and what they are doing to solve it is the best form of marketing and PR you could ever do.
Yeah.
And never,
Absolutely.
ever do you have a problem if you take the time. But I think whether it be here, whether it be as an industry, quite often we solve problems on a daily basis, constantly firefighting, constantly solving problems so people can buy that property of their dreams or their first property. Yet we don't really tell them that we've done that enough or explicitly enough, you know.
I think
Yeah, we live in a
also,
time of show me what you can do, not tell me, right? You literally need to show people the
yeah,
good work that you've done.
Yeah. And especially now, like you say, with sort of social media and sort of the content that's out there, you're quite right. There's not too many conveyancing platforms out there.
No, not at all.
well, I
No.
think often though, I hate to say this, and again, as somebody who's been in these sorts of organisations, it's fair to say, Tayo, that sometimes the firm will pick completely the wrong person to sort of do the videos or the PR or whatever. And sometimes you do get, bless them, you know, maybe because he's the head of conveyancing or whatever, or she, you know, just the dullest person on the planet doing the, you know, doing the sort of, well, conveyancing is really important. And you think, oh, that's so counterproductive.
In front of a bookcase normally,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah. And actually, I had, I mean, I was
it? I've
thrilled.
not offended anybody that's got videos in front of a bookcase.
Well,
But
yeah, but I my last but one firm, because I jumped quite a few firms, and one of the partners, and they'll remain nameless, but one of the partners did one of the dull videos, but then the IT guy wasn't very good. So and they'd obviously just whipped it straight from YouTube. So on the firm's website, and I was kind of poised with my phone. Thank God I got this, you know, I got the photo because they took it down quite quickly. But they'd got this, bless him, this partner in front of the bookcase saying, well, conveyancing is really important. But then another YouTube bumped onto the website immediately following him. And it was this lady who was, well, frankly, fairly well endowed up front, not wearing very much for some random reason, going up a stepladder. And of course, we all sort of flocked to the website to see. And there was just all of these completely inappropriate videos, just sort of jumping onto the firm's website. So his video was hastily taken down. But as I say, I don't think they'd quite got the IT skills, Tayo, to deal with it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But it made me laugh. I thought, but I wasn't sure I'd use them for conveyancing, but it gave us all a bit of a laugh that morning.
the moral to the story is that you know, lawyers have a different type of personality. You know, that
Yeah.
you wouldn't really see a lawyer on TV, would you? You know, it's a certain type of personality. How did you get into TV and all the work you've been doing recently, Tayo?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into TV through YouTube. So I was discovered by a production company in North Wales through some of my YouTube videos. They said we think it'd be great for television. We're about to get recommissioned for a new series of the Great House Giveaway. Did you want to do a screen test? And it's quite interesting because creating content isn't easy. Even though I've been doing it for some years now, it's very awkward doing it the first time, sitting in front of a ring light, sorry, and a camera, and recording for hours and editing it down to just 2 minutes. Like it's very, very long. But I think that those things made me prepared for when it was time to do television. And I kind of took like it to a duck to water effectively. So yeah, I've been doing that for coming up to about 3 years now, and it's been really, really good.
So what do you think? What next then, Tayo? What next for you?
I'm not too sure. I think that the thing that I want to focus on is how I started, which is impact, right? So anywhere where I can create more impact, making people more aware of how they can build wealth through property and improving their finances, or whether that's through investment or buying their first home effectively. So we created a platform the beginning of this year called the Home Buyers Club. which effectively creates a community for people that want to buy their first home. You've got online lessons in there. We do webinars, we do physical meetings. But I think going forward for the rest of the year, like I say, anywhere where I can create impact, I'd love to do like some talks in schools to young people, because they're not told about these things. And the earlier you learn about these things, the better. So I think that's probably one thing that I want to try and achieve this year.
And so how do people find the Home Buyers Club, Tayo?
Sure. So the Home Buyers Club is www.thehomebuyersclub.co.uk. And then you can find our Bricks with Tips content on all platforms. The spelling of Bricks with Tips is bricks with a Z, and then tips with a Z. So TIPZ.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for joining us, Tayo. It's been an absolute delight to have you with us, and you know, and for you being willing to give us your time. And hopefully the conveyancers have got well, I hope what they'll get actually, Stu, from this is about marketing themselves, isn't it? I think that's the key.
Definitely. 100%.
Thank you for having me.
No, not at all, Tayo. It's been an absolute delight. Take care.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.